What do you think the role will be of archival and theoretical approaches to early modern studies?
I think there's a transformation underway at the moment in terms of digitisation of manuscript sources and print sources for the early modern period, because it used to be that if you were interested in theory and theoretical approaches, you might not necessarily be the same individual who was immersed in the archives and primary sources, and that was a disjuncture. You had people who were embedded in the archives doing the archival work, perhaps coming to conservative conclusions, perhaps not. And there were other people who were really led by theory, whose interest was in theory, and they were maybe less likely to engage with or engaged in a different way with those primary sources. There was also a question of access. Who had access to these privileged sites of discourse from the period? That's all changed, and it is changing. And it's been changed by things like early English books online, EBO, and other electronic archives, including journal archives. What does that mean? It means it's now much easier for people from less than members of the public, although I think that might change, but undergraduates, postgraduates, academics in all contexts can now sit at their desk and access 16th and 17th century texts in the original editions, page images, so they're seeing exactly what they would see if they went in and handled the merchandise in a library or a manuscript room or a rare books room. So I think that's definitely been a dramatic change. The archives now are becoming more accessible. That's got to change things, on the one hand. On the other hand, theory itself has undergone a transformation. In the 1980s, the high point of theory, it was hard to move without having to have a theoretical perspective. You were a deconstructivist, or you were a Lacanian psychoanalyst, or whatever, feminist. And I think all of those terms have become so complicated now and so bundled together and so mixed up that theory is also something which is changing and opening up and diversifying. So I think the relationship between archival work and theoretical work is going to be that they're both seen as richer and more diverse. To give another example, historically, and I'm interested in snobbery and elitism because I think they operate in interesting ways within academia. They operate in other places too. But within academia for a long time, the archive, the manuscript source, had a kind of special status because your average person on the street couldn't access it, couldn't tell you what was in it, couldn't speak with confidence about it. As those sources become more available, and as other sources become available, because my other interest is non-hierarchical approach to sources and archives. If you're able to see the popular material, the polemical material, the pamphlets and broadsheets of a period at the same time, right alongside the official announcements, the pompous trumpeting of emperors and kings and their lickspittles, you get a different sense of the discourse that's available. It's a bit like in the past we were only able to read the Telegraph. Now we can read all the newspapers at the same time. So I think we're moving away from an official history, a high history if you like, which was imperialist, conservative, almost by nature, not just, and I'm not here talking about, although I could, the social backgrounds of the people who were doing the history 100 years ago or 50 years ago, but there's been a transformation. Universities have opened up to an extent, not completely, but universities have opened up, the archives have opened up, theory has opened up. So I think the relationship in future between archival work and theoretical work will be much closer. It won't be a question of the posh professor with access to a particular archive telling the, jumped up postdoctoral Foucauldian that they don't know what they're talking about, because they'll both be able to instantly access the same material and as I would say, then we'll see, because everything will be out in the open. So I think that process of digitisation of archives and availability of a complete cross-section of material, not just what one aristocrat happened to think or one book collector or printer happened to consider was important. I think there's going to be a much more vibrant, varied, eclectic sense. It's almost like if you imagine the difference between social media and corporate media. I think we're now going to see a situation in which what's counts as the archive is much more diverse.